I have one of those, I could turn this into a highlight vid questions. What would I recommend for designing your first homebrew class? Are you asking for like step by step? Like what do I do here, here, and here? You're asking mostly about scope, but step by step won't work, or wouldn't hurt. Okay. The things I would recommend that you do if you're trying to get into like homebrewing, if you want like an easy, you know, kind of set the ball up on the tee kind of a thing, what you should understand first is the reason why characters are given a certain type of hit dice, a certain type of armor proficiency, a certain type of weapon proficiency, certain types of tool proficiencies, certain saving throw proficiencies. The reason why you get this kind of stuff is I would recommend you to go check out one of my other video series that I've already shot on here. This is actually, I think, one of my most helpful video series that, like, I mean, hey, personal thought here, it's criminally underrated, okay? For D&D character playstyles, okay? The most important thing for you to know before you start homebrewing, okay, is that D&D has a meta, okay? You have to understand that there is a combat system in play. Like, this is a game that can produce a lot of really emotional, artistic, creative kinds of experiences, right? But do not let that cloud your vision from the fact that this is a combat simulator. A lot of us would really like to write the concept that hits and inspires so many characters in a super poetic way. It takes learning the rules and understanding the unwritten rules of the game in order to bend and break those rules and know how to bend and break them in an interesting and unique way, right? Part of that is understanding, I think, very first and foremost, that your character in D&D has three things that define their play style, okay? Number one is going to be their zone. Their zone, go watch this video, okay? Go watch these videos. The zone is either going to be, I'm going to call them a frontliner, a midliner, or a backliner, okay? The first thing that communicates that information to you whenever you're looking at a class is going to be your hit dice, okay? So your hit dice, 1d10. A d10 is one of the beefier, I mean, by all, this is an above average hit die, okay? The average hit die is a d8, which means that by default, you're probably going to be in the midline. Let me get to this point. Like, yeah, there's the boob. Okay, so this is the zones in battle boob, okay? If you are right here in the red, that is the enemy position, okay? The nipple is the enemy position. That is a bad spot to be unless your hit die is a d10 or higher. I call this area the whole areola, okay? The whole areola is the front line, okay? If you are up there on the areola, you need to have a d10 or bigger hit die, or you need to have a d8 hit die and be able to either get number one, heavy armor, or number two, pop in and pop out, okay? What I call the harasser playstyle. This is usually a spot that is reserved for Barbarian, Paladin, fighters that are going with like a strength build are definitely going to want to be up here. Some tank clerics and some tank rangers. It's pretty rare that we see characters really go up here and stay up here in combat if they do not at least have a d10 hit die. This next area is called the midline. Probably the mainstay midliner for 5e is the rogue. The rogue perfectly captures what I think the midline, like, harasser playstyle is supposed to be, okay? Rogue, if you'll notice, has a d8 hit die. They have light armor proficiency. So what this communicates to me is I'm going to be on the boob, all right? I want to be right here in the yellow. That is my good spot. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in, I'm going to attack the enemy, and I need to get out of here, okay? But, oh, I can already hear you guys saying, yeah, but what about opportunity attacks? That's the reason why so many of these D8 classes have what I call a disengagement tool, okay? If you look at Rogue, they get their cunning action that allows them to disengage as a bonus action. This is exactly communicating what you are supposed to do in combat. You want to go run up into the front line, pop, right? And then save your bonus action to disengage. Unless that enemy is very, very near death, you need to be ending your turn out of the front line, okay? This is the one thing that, like, so many people saw my monk, like, short from whenever I was talking with Josh over at Dungeoneers Pack and Ross. They saw my monk clip where I was like, stop ending your turn in the front line. This is what I mean. Monk is also supposed to be, I pop in, I do the thing, I pop out. Now, let me clarify, Monk is not very good at doing that. The reason being that this costs a key point, okay? Step of the Wind costs a key point. That's not great for them. But Monk, as you can see, is another, what I consider to be a midline harasser. Monk has the D8 hit die. They don't get their armor proficiency here, but they do get unarmored defense, right? AC equals 10 plus your dexterity modifier plus your wisdom modifier. Okay, not bad. Not bad. They can get up here, do the thing, and even if they can't disengage all that well, they might be able to avoid the attack, right? Other midliners to think about, right? We talked about the frontliners. Other midliners to think about. Artificer. Artificer has the insane strength of, this does not have any weak spot anywhere on the battlefield, okay? Artificer is meant to be a midliner, but like this is so insanely flexible. I've voiced my own grievances with this class because it literally has no weak spots on the battlefield. Every class has some kind of a weakness in that, yeah. Bard is also a midliner, but like, if you're not going Swords or Valor, there's really no reason for you to get up into the front line at all. Cleric is also a very, very flexible midliner. You really want to stay, unless you're going with like Forge Domain or War Domain, probably in the midline with a Cleric so that you can access all your buddies for healing, or cure wounds. And also, once you get Spiritual Weapon, you can stand basically anywhere you want to as a Cleric. Just hang out, send that thing in there to go fight for you, right? Druid can also be thought of as a midliner, kind of support controller. Monk, midliner. They're not very good at doing the harassment playstyle, but that's what they are intended to do. Once you see Monk come online at 5th level, they're pretty insane. Ranger can be thought of as a midliner. They have a decent hit die. They are a very, very safe midliner. They're also a very safe backliner if you want to go Legolas, archery build, right? Rogue is, in my opinion, the strongest midliner of 5th edition. They are a midline striker, and we'll talk about what roles mean here in just a second, but striker is one of those roles. Sorcerer. Sorcerer is a backliner. Warlock can be a midliner. Actually, the Warlock can do some pretty nutso stuff from the midline. Wizard is also a backliner. Blood Hunter is a Blood Hunter. Okay, the midline is any area from basically 10 feet away from the enemy. You want to stay out of their reach, ideally. If they're a large-sized enemy, just plan on this front line actually being out to about 10 feet. If they are a huge or gargantuan enemy, plan on this extending out to about like 3 squares right here, right? And then doubling that for the midline. Backliners want to be as far away from the thing as possible, but still be in range with it to deal damage. Backliners. If we have a D8 hit die for the midliners, we had a D10 or a D12 hit die for the frontliners, what do you think the hit die is going to be for a backliner? Boom! Right? Makes sense. We keep going down in hit die size. So a D6 hit die, alright? As a backliner, you are reliably going to get an average of 3.5 plus your Constitution modifier hit points whenever you level up, okay? That is nothing. That is nothing. Nothing. That is actually fairly under what creatures are going to be able to do per round as they increase in CR, okay? Whenever people say that the wizard took 1 hit and it died, the memes are kind of real, okay? And then they do not get armor proficiencies, okay? This means you are not meant to get hit. You do not want to get hit as one of these characters, alright? So that's what you're reinforcing. What this means, though, is that you can open up some power. The sorcerer and the wizard are supposed to be D&D's glass cannons. Wizards have a lot of utility. Sorcerers should be about blasting. You want to, like, this is the Danny DeVito style, right? I went in there and I started blasting. Like, yeah. Has anyone attempted to make a D4 class that works? I have not seen one. I haven't seen a D4 class that actually works. I mean, I don't really see any reason why, other than, like, why would you design that other than the fact that it would be a gimmick, you know? I don't know what it's really adding to the game, other than to say, like, yeah, I made a D4 hit die class, like, you know. But this is the lower end right here of hit points, okay? So that's what establishes your zone in battle, all right? The battle boob. See the battle boob, memorize the battle boob. Okay, so that is your zone, all right? I hope that made sense. Frontliners, your main job is to tank, deal damage, and draw aggro, okay? You want to keep the enemy focused on you and away from your backliners. Midliners, your job is to figure out a way to utilize this whole big area you get to either A, deal damage, or B, play support, or C, debuff the enemy, heal, all that good stuff, right? Backline, what is your job? The reason why everyone up here is doing the thing that they're doing, the reason why everyone else is on the tit, is so that you can stay in the back line and deal damage, okay? It is your job to be doing damage out here. That is the meta to D&D, okay? Everyone else is doing their job in trying to keep enemies off of you. It is on you to be out here dealing the damage, okay? Some people have complained about the fact that, like, well, Rogue doesn't really keep up with, Wizard in terms of, like, damage output and everything. Rogue does what it needs to do. Rogue does the midline striker thing very, very, very well. I hope that made sense for the part 1 zone. What I will say is whenever you're creating a homebrew class, one of the first things I do is I am considering what is its zone going to be, right? Because that's going to tell me a few things. It's going to tell me what its hit dice is going to be, what its armor proficiencies are going to be, possibly informing what its weapon proficiencies are going to be, and then telling me what I need to design for its core class features, right? Wait, what's going on? Hey, what's going on, Dan? We're actually in the middle of answering a question here. You're skeptical of the zone breakdown? Don't worry about it. Okay, so zones. Next part, your role. Your role, at least in my definition, is what are you doing in combat, okay? I think I've since added on to this since I made this video. Your role is going to be what defines what you do in combat, okay? This has nothing to do with role play outside of combat. It might a little bit, but this is mostly going to inform what you do in combat, okay? So there's a few different roles here. Blaster, buffer, controller, debuffer, harasser, healer, squishy. I just kind of, I use that loosely. It's basically the glass cannon, right? Striker, support, tank, taunt, zoner, and I close here. Okay. I actually defined my overall thesis of what your role was going to be, right? Your role is a summary of the kind of combat game loop your character's abilities and actions create. Blaster. Blasters are large area-based damage, almost guaranteed to be tied to spellcasters. You might think of this as like artillery in like a war game, right? The blaster's job is, like artillery mostly in war games doesn't have a whole lot of mobility, and that's why they're supposed to be in the back, right? They've got great range, but they don't have a whole lot of mobility, and they've got high damage. Blasters need to just stay in the back line because they don't have a lot of armor. Buffer. The buffer and debuffer is kind of tied into a support playstyle, but I think that debuffer doesn't feel, I don't know, support in a way. I almost wanted to call this like indirect. The buffer, a character that is focused on indirect effects to increase their allies' effectiveness, tied into being a healer, right? Controller. This is a character focused on reducing the action options and movement of their enemies. Probably the strongest controller that we currently have is probably just Druid by virtue of the Druid spell list. I will say that Fathomless does have a lot of controller potential within it. Monk is supposed to be a bit of a controller, but Stunning Strike doesn't come on until 5th level, and it's not super reliable, okay? Debuffer. A character focused on indirect effects to increase their enemy or decrease their enemy's effectiveness. So Bard is the mainstay debuffer and buffer in a way. Probably the strongest debuffer in 5th edition right now is probably College of Eloquence Bard, which it's so strong I don't allow it on my tables. I'm just I made some tweaks in here to College of Eloquence Bard that if somebody asked me to play it, I would probably allow for it. But debuffers, it is your job to try to make the enemies less effective at it, right? You want to shut them down as hard as you possibly can. I think the pinnacle of like what is preventing like enemy options, like you looking at Vicious Mockery is a great effect Bestow Curse, or like you might even be able to argue that like Counterspell or Dispel Magic, these are both nice debuffers, right? This is my 5e overhaul project I've been working on for like over a year. This is kind of my intro into why I started doing this. Harasser. Okay, so this is a playstyle in D&D that I mentioned earlier about disengagement tools, right? If your class gives you a disengagement tool, you are most likely going to be a harasser, okay? A harasser is a midline zone character meant to move into the front line to deal damage and then move out to the midline for safety, okay? You want to pop in, do the thing, pop out, right? Rogue communicates this very well, but just vis-a-vis you do not have extra attack because you're meant to go in there, deal 1 instance of damage, and get out, right? So that's why you get uncanny move or cunning movement or cunning action. Wow. Healer, a character who prioritizes restoring hit points and removing detrimental conditions. In 5e, you all know it, Life Cleric, right? Go Life Cleric. Dream Druid also really wanted to get in on this territory, but just kind of couldn't. One fix that I recommend that has immediately fixed Dream Druid at my tables. Let me just scroll down here for you guys. All that I did, I cleaned up a little bit of the bottom of the Summer Court feature, gave it a little polish post Tasha's, and then I also introduced giving it an expanded spell list, and Dream Druid feels very, very good if you do this. So, that is your job, right? You want to remove conditions, you want to be able to heal characters up, etc., etc. You should know that if your class gives you access to resurrection magic, you should most likely always pick that up because those are usually the most impactful spells in the game. You can literally bring people back from the dead. If your party doesn't have at least one person with access to resurrection magic, you just expect to be rolling up new character sheets. Some DMs aren't big fans of resurrection magic because it makes the death field cheap or something. I don't know. I've usually felt like the cost of resurrection magic is pretty fair. Peeler. Similar to the controller and often found on tanks, the Peeler focuses on pulling enemies' aggression off of other characters, okay? Actually, the best class for this isn't even really a 5th edition class. It isn't a official 5th edition class, rather. My favorite class I've ever seen pull this off was Mage Hand Press's Complete Warden. From playing a lot of MOBAs, this is a unique thing to, like, if I play Smite, Guardians, right? Guardians have a high amount of peel. And peel is a mechanic in which, like, if you're trying to get an enemy off of one of your buddies, you want good peel, okay? Somebody like Athena in Smite has this ability called Confound, where, like, she can literally taunt away, or it's either Confound or Taunt, where she can literally pull the enemy off of other characters. And that's the thing that the Warden provides. I love this kind of a play style here. I've always been a support main, and this is the kind of thing that would, like, if Paladin got this outside of Compelled Duel, or like Barbarian got a mechanic like that outside of Ancestral Guardian, then I think that I would probably really enjoy the tank playstyle in 5e, outside of just, I have a shitload of AC, right? This right here, Ancestral Protectors, the strongest form of peel, or hard, I say hard, this is soft drawing aggro, right? This is a soft taunt, in my opinion. Starting when you choose this path at 3rd level, Spectral Warriors appear when you enter your rage. While you're raging, the first creature you hit with an attack on your turn becomes the target of the warriors, which hinder its attacks. Until the start of your next turn, that target has disadvantage on any attack roll that isn't against you, and when the target hits a creature other than you with the attack, that creature has resistance to the damage dealt by the attack. The effect ends early if your rage ends. You are meant to hard draw aggro off of other people. I love this as a peel mechanic. This is so good. That's what I mean by peeler. I think if you have a mix of peel, or some people call that taunt, right? A good mix of peel and a good mix of, like, support, you're a pretty amazing tank for 5e. Strikers. Okay, this is the most basic, right? The game gives you a stick. What do you do with that stick? I hit people with this stick. Cool, you hit one creature with that stick. Let's make you hit stuff with the stick harder. You're probably a striker, okay? Probably the striker is the single target, damage focused specialty of martial characters. People saying that, like, Well, martial characters are just missing out because spells allow you to do so much in the game. Strikers are able to add their modifier to damage like certain spellcasters can't, okay? They're able to add in a source of flat, reliable damage that's going to be in on every single attack, rather than leaving the power of their spell or whatever of the dice rolls, okay? So they are more reliable at doing this single target damage. It's a reason why, usually if you see you can add damage like a flat modifier to the damage of a spell, that's usually reserved for a much later level kind of a feature, because that is supposed to be like, yeah, crit on 19 with a stick, right? That is typically an unusually high amount of power because you are adding that to multiple different creatures, okay? In my opinion, Rogue has a great striker feature with sneak attack, okay? But I talked about this one in the past. If you've seen the Smite Sigma mindset video, Divine Smite is most likely the strongest striker feature in all of 5e. It's a bit more reliable form of damage, with it being radiant damage. This being when you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack. So you don't really have to secure this. It's just already secured for you when you hit it with a melee attack. And this is only one creature, all right? Single target damage, pretty easy. Bam, right there. Support. A character extremely focused on indirect effects and usually heals. Typically a mix of buffer, healer, and sometimes tank. Okay, we've kind of covered this already. So we'll move on to tank. A character that intends on drawing enemy aggression to take damage instead of other characters. It's the mix of what I would say like the peeler playstyle and like building hard tank for like higher armor class, higher hit points and everything that really defines what it means to be a, tank. Zoner. A character that creates obstacles and obstructions to impede enemies with the environment. Pretty much the only one that we have here that does this. I wish Illusion Wizard could do this. I really wish, because it seems like that's what it wants to invoke, but it just kind of doesn't. The strongest zoner that we currently have right now is most likely going to be some form of Druid, just being able to construct terrain, like make difficult terrain, that kind of a thing, right? Walls of stone, whatever. If you can get access to a wall spell, you can be a zoner. Like that's, yeah. Wall of Stone is probably more evocative of that, but Wall of Force probably being the ultimate realization of that kind of power, right? So think about what you want that character to be doing in combat, right? You have the fiction in your mindset, like you have the fiction set in your mind for your concept. So then it's time to figure out what is its role going to be and how can I enhance that role? For me, I had it set in my mind that I wanted to make, like talking about the dancer, I wanted the dancer to be a martial support, but not in a warlord kind of way. I didn't really know what that could be and how it could do it really uniquely, right? So what I thought, is there really a support that focuses on your action economy? Okay, that could be really sick. Or like thinking about the merchant. What all can the merchant do? Are there really a lot of options outside of the artificer that allow you a pretty constant supply of magic, or that allow you a pretty constant supply of items, some of those being magic items, right? So I consider that the supplier kind of a play style. And also the fact of, if it's going to be like looking at the cleric, the fact that you can literally dish out your spell slots, like that felt like, oh, you are a spell slot battery for your party. Moving on to the next part, your dynamic. Your dynamic is your roleplay defining stuff, okay? Your dynamic, pretty interchangeable. I listed a few here, but I'm sure people could think of a bunch more. Brain, Dungeoneer, Face, Heart, Muscle, Navigator, Scout, and Sneak. I also go through in this video and show a few different like examples of like, what does it mean to be a brain? What does it mean to be a Dungeoneer? Think of like, what's the fiction of being a brain? I guess Doctor Strange, sure. Tony Stark, whatever. Well, Tony Stark might be more Dungeoneer, really, than brain. But I mean, he's still a brain. Anyways, Dungeoneer, MacGyver, right? Ultimate Dungeoneer. Face, Dandelion, right? From The Witcher. You can say that Sam played a face in playing Scanlan on Critical Role. Faye. Faye is one of my favorite faces in any source of fiction. And of course, Tyrion Lannister, right? By the way, if you haven't read The Gentleman Bastards, Locke Lamora is like one of the best faces in fantasy ever. The Heart's job is to watch over the party. Most likely in 5e, these are going to be tied into being healers, right? So, like, you had Caduceus Clay was definitely the Heart, right? Where's the stomach? The Heart in Cowboy Bebop, Jet Black, 100%. Guy's the cook. Guy is the ship that everyone goes back to. He is home, right? He is the home for all of the Bebop crew. Jake the dog, he is the big brother to Finn, right? Like, he takes care of Finn. Whenever someone's cooking, it's usually Jake, right? Yuna, in a way, yeah, I'm doing another playthrough of Final Fantasy X, and I'm starting to think that the Heart actually isn't Yuna so much. It might just be like a kind of a general heart of like the party, yeah. Oh, this video was your favorite that I've ever made? Oh, I appreciate that. I put a lot of work into this video. A lot of work. And it's still, I think this video is criminally underviewed. Absolutely criminally underviewed. Everyone close stream and read Lies of Locklamore. It is damn good. Those of you that have read Mistborn would understand why I put Sawset on here as well. But probably the #1 heart of all time. #1 heart in all of fiction whatsoever. If you want to know about this character archetype, go watch Avatar: The Last Airbender. Uncle Iroh is the best heart that has ever been put into a piece of fiction whatsoever. You think Wakka's the heart? Wakka's the racist heart. Yeah. I like, someone in my Discord said, like, Wakka stubs his toe and blames it on the Al Bhed. The second that you see Uncle Iroh, you understand what this archetype is about, right? Your muscle. Some people say that strength is a dump stat. That's not really the case. Muscle has its purpose, all right? Even, like, you could have a brain, you could have a heart, you could have a Dungeoneer. That's fine. If the Dungeoneer can't pick down the door, they need someone to break it down, all right? That's the muscle's job. Your job is usually going to be to intimidate, to make athletics checks. You're going to need someone doing this stuff. Yasha, like, I'm very strong. Like, it is kind of her character of being, I'm the big dude, right? Chewbacca, you don't want to piss off, what is it? Let the Wookiee win, right? Because otherwise the Wookiee's going to rip your arm off. It can be fun to be that big muscle guy, right? A good thing to do is, whenever you're going to play a muscle, is to try and avoid the trope of, like, being the dumb muscle. Being the dumb muscle is a pretty overplayed trope. Grog got away with it in Critical Role because I think that Grog was like, I think it was like Travis Williams' first like D&D experience. Just being able to play that like, fun barbarian, just rage, yeah. Like, I think that gave him a pass, and Grog was charming. Tifa, I think, is actually pretty fantastic muscle in Final Fantasy VII. The greatest muscle in any piece of fiction. Brock motherfucking Samson, all right? Brock Samson is, if you want to know what it's like to be muscle, the purpose for muscle while you need that there, go watch it. Go watch Venture Brothers. Brock Samson is awesome at conveying what it means to be muscle, okay? Just one of the greatest characters ever. I love Brock. Yeah, man's man, right? Brock Samson, dude, yes. If you want to play a muscle, go watch like the best clips of Brock. You will immediately be so stoked about playing a strength-based character. Navigator, okay? Aragorn, 7 and 9 from Star Trek, Nami from One Piece, Sokka from Avatar, Radio from The Brave Little Toaster, Moana, Percy Jackson, and Melfina from Outlaw Star were the ones that kind of came to my mind. The Navigator's job in D&D is supposed to be, you are the cartographer, you are the one making sure that the party doesn't get lost. If people were really applying survival checks, the Navigator would probably be one of the most necessary pieces of, like, party architecture in the entire game. The problem is that not a lot of tables really like to be, to really track survival rules in that way, right? There are ways to make survival pretty cool, right? I want to track the enemy. It doesn't necessarily have to be, we want to find the place. This could be, I want to find the thing, right? I want to find the object. I want to find the creature. So it could be about tracking. It could be about knowing what weather is coming in, right? But everyone's got to serve their role. It is your job to make sure that the party gets to where they need to be, right? And does so safely. If the player wants to play this, how can you as a DM try to make them feel cool for trying to play that, right? Cool, so then survival checks come up a little bit more. If they want to play a cook, make sure that you're tracking the rules for like eating a little bit more, right? You want to make their stuff useful. So the Navigator's job is to make sure that the party doesn't get surprised. Okay? The scout's job is to try and establish surprise. You want to try and find the targets to surprise, right? Your job as a scout, you want to look out, make sure that like no enemies are coming up, whatever. Really in D&D, the strongest way that you can be a scout is to prevent surprise or to establish surprise, right? Now, if you look at these dynamics, right? Drizzt, Spook. Spook, if you've read Mistborn, makes a whole lot of sense. Keyleth, Sam Kim from Redwall, Kyokujiro has one of the coolest quirks to be a scout. Her ears are literally like headphone jacks that she can plug into a building or like into a wall, and she can hear what's going on the other side, which is like weird but sick. Taron Ibarra from Wheel of Time, and then Tracer from Overwatch. Okay, your job is to establish surprise, and then it's the next character's job, the sneak, to exploit that surprise. Okay, so your job, if you're going to play a sneak, usually this is going to be a rogue. Reason being, like Assassin Rogue is all about I want to get that first turn in combat. Gloomstalker Ranger is also about I want to get the most out of that first turn in combat, right? Different sneaks that we have in here. Arya Stark is one of my favorite sneaks, despite the show being absolute horseshit towards the end. Bilbo is supposed to be a sneak. Zuko does in Avatar whenever he's like invading the Fire Nation as a blue spirit, you know, like a Nightcrawler makes sense. Lift from the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, and then Snake from Metal Gear Solid. Scout is trying to figure out the targets to surprise. Navigator is trying to prevent the surprise, prevent the party from being surprised. The Sneak's job is to, once you have the target, start the surprise round, right? At that point, you transition into your roles and yada, yada, yada. Dynamics, how do these mostly get informed in 5e design? These are informed through your tool and your skill proficiencies. Getting, like, yeah, sure, there's your, like, core features that you're going to get. For Paladin, you're mostly going to invest into Strength, Constitution, and Charisma. So investing into Strength is going to make me think, okay, do I want to go muscle with it? Investing into Constitution, of course, you're going to want to frontline with it. Investing into Charisma, I'm going to want to be a leader, right? I could be a face with a Paladin, which you see a lot of people go. I could very easily figure myself playing a heart because I can get proficiency in medicine, go with like Cure Wounds and lay on hands. Okay, I could be some kind of a healer, sort of a heart. I can role play that out, right? Seems like these are really niche roles. They kind of are. I mean, yeah, they are. These are supposed to inform what you do in terms of role play. So why are you breaking? Oh, okay, there we go. Why am I breaking down Navigator, Scout, and Sneak, but lumping together all social roles into Face? I'm not lumping all social roles into Face. So you have the Brain, and the Brain's job could be to do that research, kind of a social thing, you know, the Brain intelligence Face. The Face definitely has their thing. The Heart can also be thought of as a secondary Face, because usually, like, I've thought about putting Guide in here as a, like, dynamic. Why am I breaking down Navigator, Scout, Sneak, but lumping together all social roles into Face? Navigator, Scout, and Sneak. The Scout's job is mostly to make, like, figure out who the targets are, rather than to prevent the surprise, is the way that I was thinking about that. Now, if we want to get all semantical about it, like, do they need to be separated? I don't know. Does it really matter? Is it going to kill you to, like, disagree with me here? No. It's not my, like, thesis or anything here, but it's what I view it as. So, yeah, you can disagree. You can say that one doesn't need to be in here. Who cares? All right. Cool. So, no, your playstyle is, as far as I'm concerned, determined by three things. And again, we can get semantic and, like, disagree about these whatevers. I'm just answering for people that have asked how I start in on a class design. I'm just letting you all know how I get into it, okay? Whenever you're making a character, or you're making a class, right? Those are the things that you got to consider. What I consider to be the three elements of your playstyle. Okay, so your zone, your role, and your dynamic. So where you're going to stand in combat, what you do in combat, and then what you do outside of combat. That's the breakdown right there. This all informs what your hit dice is going to be, what armor proficiencies you're going to get, what weapons you're going to get, what tools you're going to get. Saving throws we'll get to here in a second, skills, and then what skills you're going to get, right? Saving throws. You need a strong and a weak saving throw whenever you're making a class. You need the strong saving throws. These are saving throws that are going to come up very, very often. These are going to be dexterity, constitution, and wisdom. Weak saving throws are going to be ones that don't come up very often. These are going to be strength, charisma, and intelligence. So let me double check on that. Strong saving throws. Dexterity, constitution, wisdom. Weak saving throws. Charisma, strength, and intelligence. You need to have a strong save. You need to have a weak save. Okay? Usually you want these to always synergize with the class. Okay? As a ranger, you gain the following class features because you can go strength or dexterity build with ranger. And that's why you get strength and dexterity. This is your weak save. This is your strong save. Let's move on to another one and look at cleric. Cleric's main spellcasting ability is going to be wisdom, so that's why they get wisdom as their strong save, and they get charisma as their weak save. Okay? Looking at, let's say, monk. Monk is a weird one. People are always like, why don't I get dexterity and wisdom? Because those are both strong saves. Okay? So that's why you got to get strength as your weak save, dexterity as your strong save. Sorcerer. Their spellcasting ability is charisma. That's why charisma is their weak save. Constitution is their strong save. Hopefully that makes sense. The sign of somebody that doesn't really understand the 5e design philosophy is that they give something 2 strong saving throws right here, or 2 weak saving throws. Yes, 2 strong saving throws are a rookie mistake. After that, the one thing that you want to do is you want to figure out something very, very cool that the player is going to get at first level. Reserve the temptation to give it spell casting unless you are dead set that it absolutely requires spell casting. Because spell casting eats up a whole lot of your power budget without really injecting a ton of flavor. I struggled very, very hard to justify why the merchant had to get spell casting, and then once I had the idea of exchangeable casting, it just made sense, and I was like, yeah, this has to be on here. And literally every merchant I see in fantasy gets spell casting in some form, so I was like, yeah, they gotta have this on here. It makes way too much sense. So the very fact that value has magical, it's almost a divine kind of a magic in a way, right? It made sense for them to get spell casting. Dancer, I was like, this is absolutely never getting spell casting unless it's in a subclass. Like, yeah, I could, sure, you could say that like beauty is the thing that gives them their magic, whatever, but that's also the thing that like they try to use to justify for Bard why they get magic, right? And I think that WotC kind of fails to justify that in a way. I think that there were so many other approaches that they could have taken to making a Bard that didn't need spell casting, right? I'm not saying that this is a bad class. I'm saying that I don't think that artistically the Bard really does the thing that it doesn't scratch my itch, especially as a musician, for what I want a Bard to be in 5e. You know, I would say you should be hesitant to give spellcasting first off as a first level feature unless it is absolutely required for the fiction of it to work, right? Cleric makes sense. Wizard makes sense. Warlock absolutely makes sense. Sorcerer, yeah, you're born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline. You're a sorcerer. You get magic. Paladin, sure. Ranger, oh, weird. I don't think we've ever covered this. Ranger gets spellcasting. And the general perception of it seems to be that people don't like it. They think that the Ranger is one of the weaker class designs because it gets spellcasting. Weird, right? It's probably one of the reasons why Spellless Ranger is the most common homebrew out there, you know? Spells are just the most fun system in 5e? Sure. I think that spells are more often than not used as an excuse to eat up your power budget. You can't imagine not having fun playing a spellcaster, honestly. Ranger can get you pretty close. Ranger spells are fairly unimpactful unless you buy Xanthar's Guide to Everything, in which case they start to kind of click and make sense. Ranger spells are also not prepared. Yeah, Paladin gets spells. Yeah. Yeah, you know, you're right. No, they don't get spells, they get smite slots. Half casting, the reason why it works on Paladin really well and not on Ranger is because Paladin gets another thing that they can do with their spell slots other than the things on their spell list. They should just be able to use the spell slot for Hunter's Mark. Yeah, I think if Hunter's Mark was a class feature, I'd be happier with it. Ranger doesn't have a problem in combat. The problem is just that, like, people don't really like the flavor of it, right? Because it got spell slots, and it got spell casting, and people don't instinctively think of a Ranger as being a spellcaster. It's just not usually a thing, right? They usually want someone that feels like, I'm going to mark the thing, I'm going to hit it, possibly deal extra damage. I think that, like, Artemis kind of evokes the feeling of, like, what it means to be a ranger. I just think of, like, the character of Artemis, you know, the Greek goddess, and the way that she's been conveyed in a bunch of different video games, and I'm like, okay, that feels ranger, right? Yeah, I could see, like, ranger being the one that got the crit scaffolding. You're like, make ranger feel like the cool crit class. Ooh, wait. No. I can't. I need to do the Runekeeper. I'm not going to get onto a whole ranger new restructure based around crits. No, that is a cool thought though. Ooh, because you want to reward the ranger for being like having deadly accuracy and having that like, man, no. Yes, 100% rangers using spells feels wrong. Yep. Yes, Heavy's gunslinger feels a lot more like the ranger than the ranger class. Yes, I will 100% agree with that. Another tangent has a hook to me. Hey, that's why I call it a hang stream, right? What you want to do, and this is probably going to be the last thing because I'll get back into this. Yeah, Artemis from Hades, there you go. What you want to do is you want to figure out something cool for it to do with its first level, okay? By default, usually you can assume, like, what am I going to have in combat, right? Action. By default, players are going to do a few things with their action, right? Attack, cast a spell, dash, disengage, dodge, feature, a feature that calls for an action, help, ready, use an object, grapple, shove, hide, shield. Okay, cool. So this is everything that you can do with your action, right? If I'm going to give something a feature, right? What do I want it to do? Do I want it to be a martial? Okay, then I need to think about what I can do to either incentivize it to use this action right here, or if that's not what I want it to do, I need to give it something better than this, right? But more reasonable, right? Something better, but reasonable. As an example, I know as soon as I get done with a Runekeeper, maybe I will like be able to reference another class. But for me, making a martial, making the dancer, I never wanted you to use the attack action. I basically never wanted you to do this, right? Like, I wanted it to be, if it's going to be a support, I want to make you a martial that is going to be doing whatever else it can other than this right here. That's why I gave you all the flares. And that's also why I gave you literal step up, which is you just give your action away to somebody else, which is very, very strong, it turns out. Being able to be the battery for actions for your team turns out to be amazing in D&D 5e. Help action. I am so glad to see, and I just made a video on this one, right? I'm so glad to see that people are starting to look at the help action and like, oh, wait, I can build a warlord. It's all hidden in here. What? Like, I can go mastermind and I can command my buddies to attack. I feel like a warlord all of a sudden. What? Yeah. Help action is really good, it turns out. Also, funny enough, if you don't have anything else you can do with your turn, this is most definitely what you should be doing by default right here. There's a reason why every companion defaults to dodge if you don't give it an order. Plus 2 AC is half cover. Oh my god, I'm an idiot. Yes, okay. Plus 2 AC is half cover. Yes, yeah. No, you're right. Okay. The disadvantage on attack rolls against you, right? Disadvantage on attack rolls against you, advantage on dex saves until your next turn. What was that? The plus 2 is, you're right. Whenever I made this, I was just typing it up from memory. Yeah, I must have just mixed cover and dodge. That's funny. Okay. Yes. So dodge, disadvantage on attack rolls against you, advantage on dex saves until the end of your next turn. Very, very good. Also, be considering terrain that you can get around. Actually, that reminds me, I should probably redo those cards. You should be giving the character something good for them to do in their first turn of combat. With their first level, with their action in combat. You need to always remember that action economy is a thing in 5e. So, their action, their bonus action, reaction, and movement. Yeah, don't worry, dodge is still the same it always has been. Taron just screwed up making that form back in the day. Including grapple and shove, which can also be done with the attack. Dodge, dash, disengage, help, hide, ready, use an object, cast a spell. You guys know, if it calls for a bonus action, calls for an action, that's all that. Okay, I don't need to cover all that. Offhand attack, if dual wielding, got all that. Okay, off attack, cast a spell, maybe use a feature that calls for using it, right? All right, neat. We're trying to come up with why you would give something a feature, right? So, the best thing that you can do at 1st level, okay, is you need to define what it's going to do with its action. In most turns in combat, you need to define this. What does it mean for you to go into combat, and what are you going to be doing, right? Barbarian is going to be going in and attacking, okay? You want to feel safer doing that as a barbarian, and specifically barbarian in the front line doing that, right? That's why on top of rage dealing damage, it also gives you defensive boosts, right? L1, I just mean level 1. I hope that that shorthand's not throwing anybody off. L1V. This is something that, this is where you can let your artistic, like, muscles flex here, okay? I think the person who defined like what feels good for 5e design here, and I mean, I'm going to continue to shut this guy out because, yes, he is the reason why several of us are homebrewing, is Benjamin Huffman with his Pugilist. He figured out the thing that felt really, really good. Like, I know what this thing wants to do outside of combat is street smart. Okay, now, sure, he does this at 2nd level, but hang on with me here. Carousing, shadowboxing, and sparring all count as light activity for the purposes of resting for you. Additionally, once you have completed a long rest in a city, you know all public locations in the city as if you were born and raised there, and you cannot be lost by non-magical means while within inside the city, okay? What this does, this defines everything you want to be role-playing, right? This is a super interesting feature. Does it give you a whole lot of mechanical weight? No, this is a ribbon. So a ribbon, dynamic enhancing ribbon in some way, okay? Now, and this doesn't always have to push you into like, do you want to be the, what is happening here? Do you want to be the face? Do you want to be whatever? This can be a pretty open-ended, I want to be a face, I want to be a muscle, I want to be a brain, right? All the different base classes. First off, let me show you an example of how not to do an L1 dynamic enhancer. Druidic. At least in the core modules, Thieves' Cant has had a use. So far, there is not a use for this feature, other than the character doing everything they can to try and get the DM to feed this somehow, to try and like provide a reason for this to pay off. And then it's like, do you know Druidic? Cool, you know what the thing is. I've thought at times about running some kind of a contest to see like who can come up with a use for Druidic. Like, it's an invitation to try and make it cool and try and make it useful, but like, no, power budget is an abstract. Okay, so think of it just like I've got this big old lump of something, right? And I mostly just estimate that like, yeah, that's about a 5. That's about, you know, it's like we're looking at features like we're looking at butts, right? Like, yeah, that's an 8 out of 10 butt. Like, you know. Did you hear that? I thought Amanda was asleep. She's apparently in the living room. That butt
yeah,
nice.
Buddy.
That butt way nice. You know, we're thinking abstractly about it, right? This feature is probably very uniquely strong or whatever. Let me backtrack on that just a tiny bit. Power budget is something that we can somewhat assign a numerical value to. Somewhat. There was a designer named James Musicus who had tried to do this. Now, I know I'm pulling up D&D Wiki here, but this is like, it's not actual homebrew. It's just, you know, someone trying to analyze the game, okay? Yeah, runes equal butts. Got it. Cool. So, the Musicus meter. This tried to assign a point value to different features, right? So whenever you're trying to come up with a race for your homebrew world and you want to make it balanced, This can give you a kind of sense as to the numbers behind maybe what a feature is worth, right? Lucky. When you roll a 1 on an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, you can re-roll the die and must use the new roll. They figure that's about a 0.5? Really? That sounds very, very good. Sunlight sensitivity, about a negative. Wait, this is a much smaller swing. I'm used to seeing characters that have about like a dwarf. Yeah, okay, so this is a smaller value right here. There's another music scale that's about. This is on the detect balance one, yeah. You can already see there's several people that are looking at this currently. Actually, let's see how many people we can get on here if I post this over in chat. I'm just curious how many people we could actually see checking out this document. Okay, haha, here we go. This is a table that we've been using whenever we're trying to make homebrew races and stuff, okay? Because it gives us a pretty good estimation of like, and you can most likely ignore ability score increases, okay? This is most likely, have they marked it to get taken off? Really? Interesting. I mean, ability score increases are probably going to be removed from here, seeing as that's just the way, yeah. But it goes to show you how valuable we actually thought the flexibility of being able to choose your ability scores was going to be. I just realized you all probably can't see shit on this table. Choice of ability score improvement, +1, right? We thought that was like a 5. Okay, you add 5 to this integer, right? If you got an ability score of -2, a -4 off of the integer, right? Skills. If I get my choice of 2 skill proficiencies, whoa, woo, that's about a 5. That's pretty nice. It's unusual that you would get that kind of a choice, right? Magic. Being able to get a freebie cantrip, ooh, a 2? That's pretty nice. I'll explain it, okay? The feature listed here is the feature that you should probably be looking for, and like, if I'm going to make this race, this is like the feature I'm thinking of about giving it, right? Let's say I want to give it spider climb. Cool. Well, they call that a 4, so I would add that 4. It gets standard 30 feet of speed. Well, so does every other race, so that's like a 0. I'm not going to factor that in, right? Cool. Yeah, the choice of stuff is no longer going to probably be calculated anymore. Now, let's say I want to give it dark vision. 60 feet of dark vision? Yeah, that works. Cool, so +3. Let's say, wow, they think blind vision is only an 8? Or blind sight? I think it's actually a little bit higher than that. Okay, advantage. Let's say I want to get advantage on rolls to slap babies. Whatever. Situational roll. A rare roll. Whatever. 1. Whatever. I just add these up, right? Okay? So I add these up, and eventually what this is going to do is it's going to give me a number. And I measure that number against other races to see if it might at least comparatively fit in line with the game. Now, there's some things that you just shouldn't do whenever you're designing, and I'll show you right here. Number 1, do not give a player character option vulnerability to bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage. That is, yeah, don't. Just don't do this. This is, you are in for a bad time. Bad time. If you do this, we're not even talking about playing D&D on like Dark Souls hard. We're talking about playing D&D with like literally God hates you. Like, yeah. If you had all 3, yeah, it would be -120. It is very, very hard to bring a character up from giving them any kind of physical vulnerability and making them reasonable for play. You can do like common vulnerabilities, rare vulnerabilities, whatever. If you want to see the reason why Yuan-Ti just got their poison immunity nerfed and like why magical resistance is so valuable, magic resistance. They view that as a 19, whereas we've seen some of the other stuff viewed as like 4, 5, 8, you know, choice of feat, 20, 100% agree with that. Variant human is absolutely, yeah, awesome. Yuan-Ti not only gets magic resistance, they also had their immunity to poison damage, which they don't have on here. Consider it to be, I would consider it to be not just one, it's not just one common resistance. Let's double, if not triple this. An immunity to poison damage is insane. If you look at some of the standard races on here, 29 for Hill Dwarf. This right here, honestly, if I'm designing a race, I like races that feel like they're about in this 29 to 31 range. I think that races, whenever they're put into this 25 range, which is what they say is like kind of the standard, those always tend to feel very underwhelming and just kind of meh. I found that like around 29 is where they start to feel like, ooh, this does something really unique and really fun. I say if they press 35, that's where I don't feel comfortable with it anymore. So Variant Human being a 33, that's like a pretty top level. Yeah. Eric Cocker being a 41. Yep. You guys see what I mean? Standard fly speed. They rated as a 16. Come on now. What? Genocide. Pretty overwhelmingly terrible for Earth Genocide to be a 19, right? Like, yeah. I will say we will probably see this shoot up to about a 32. I think after the stuff that's in Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse, yeah, Earth Genocide is probably going to shoot up to a 32. I still think they are underestimating shield defense. I think Turtle could probably be up here at like a 34. Some of it's going to be estimation, robotic Raven Mage, right? Yeah, gauging the power of an individual feature is challenging, but once you do it over enough time, it just kind of clicks, right? You start to see like, what would Eric Cocker be now? Just not factor in the ASIs, and it also helped that the ASIs were very synergetic for Eric Cocker Monk. So we're just not going to factor in the ASIs anymore. We're not going to factor in the 20 feet of fly speed because that got up to 30. Standard fly speed is 16. Okay, we don't need to add the plus 10, so there's not 12 there. We're going to up that D4 to a D6, so plus 2. They also got a spell. So they got Gust of Wind, right? We're just going to say level 1 spell at 3rd level 1 time per day. This isn't factoring in languages or anything like that anymore. There's a lot of changes that have been made since Tasha's that are making it to where, like, this is kind of a poor judgment of, like, the scale is thrown off, right? Are Reddit designers using a table like this for classes? Not as far as I know. Some people have tried to make one for classes, but, like, I don't recommend that anybody try to just dive into a full class. I recommend that you start trying to learn via designing subclasses for pre-existing classes, okay? Oh. Well, I guess it deserved explanation still. So Eric Cocker at this point, the fly speed is still quite a bit, and they do get their flexible ASI on top of all that. Because we've removed ASI calculations from everything, it's kind of hard to tell what where the races stand right now in terms of this scale, right? Because so much of the core calculations for this scale are built into ASIs being fixed into 2 particular ability scores, whatever. So it's a new system. This scale is a little bit invalid. Races should generally not eclipse 30. Now, I think that the races that we're seeing now are most likely going to be at least 30, if not above. What we've determined is that those are actually races in that power level that tend to feel really damn fun to play. At least if it was going off in the ASI system, right? Bugbear, bam. Bugbear is my 30. Bugbear I look at and I'm like, yep, I want to design races that feel about as fun to play as Bugbear, because Bugbear is hilarious and fun to play. This is inspiring so many ideas. I love this, love this race. I think Goblin's going to wind up being a pretty big winner out of this new book. Goblin's going to scare us. I think that Bugbear, surprise attack is going to go from a 5 to probably a 10. I think that the people are going to double its value now. The buffs, I think, are probably going to be a little too much. Before I get super into all that, I will say that I think Shatterkai and Bugbear are probably going to produce some very unintended results. Some unintended interactions. Those need to be toned down. Or that surprise attack, right? I want that to work more than once on your turn. I would think that it, at the very least, needs to be once per creature. Yes. Yes. That is, if you want to go with my, like, recommended change on that? Well, I mean, bam. Who hasn't taken their first turn into combat yet? Here you go, for the first time. I think it could be pretty clean. I think you could do that pretty cleanly. But it's another example of, like, if you go Eldritch Blast with that, you are effectively casting Eldritch Blast as if you were 5, if not 11 levels higher than what you currently are. It's ridiculous what Bugbear can get out of that buff. Anyways, so that's the tech balance. Last thing I'll say on this. So you want a dynamic enhancing ribbon? Bam. I think Benjamin's Pugilist did a very, very good job at establishing what it means to be a utility like ribbon in here, right, with Street Smart. In a way, you can say expertise. This is another feature that I think is a bit of a trap for new designers. I would really advise you to do everything you can to not write expertise in your class, unless it's just absolutely required for something to work. The reason why Rogue gets expertise is because this is supposed to be the skill monkey. Like, there doesn't... If you're like, I want to write a skill monkey for D&D, like, it's kind of already here. So it's not really necessary. If you think like, well, I want to take my thing and make it a skill monkey. Well, okay. Rogue does it. Bard does it. Why should... and I guess Artificer does it too, right? So you have your int, you have your deck, or your int, you have your charisma, and then you have your, like, I guess, dex here, right? Do you need the wisdom one? Like, I just really advise people not to write expertise into a feature, because we tend to see this written on a lot of amateur homebrew, because it's a way to eat up power budget and a way to fool yourself into thinking that you're writing a roleplay feature when you're not. You're giving them the ability to get some character expression, and you're eating up power budget in a way that's just like, meh, I can throw this on here, right? I do not recommend, don't fiddle around with that. Here, expertise for the rogue, it's specific in that you can get proficiency with thieves tools or one of your skill proficiencies, right? Like, cool, you were supposed to be the dungeoneer. Great, it's giving you that, and it gives you thieves cant, which, like, it's slightly better. It's slightly better than Druidic. Just ever so slightly, but yeah. Yeah, I do like magical tinkering quite a bit, but I think that magical tinkering on the Artificer could have been a cantrip, and a really unique signature cantrip for Artificer. If you wanted to make, like, more, inventive... Hey, Trek, how you doing? Oh my god. Why did I forget French? Que parlez-vous? Damn it. Alright. Well, it's been 3 years since I've taken a French class. Anyways. What are some flavor RP features that I feel are missing? For one, the Barbarian doesn't really have a roleplay feature, like a dynamic feature, unless you go with the optional class features, right? Primal Knowledge, Instinctive Pouch, Primal Knowledge is your, main thing, right? And even then, it's only, I get more skill proficiencies, which, alright, whatever. Danger Sense is supposed to be trying to push you into being a bit of a dungeoneer, but it's like, you can... You're good at disarming the traps by running into them, right? What do I need? Shrekkeros is French, and that's why I was saying, hey. Comment is how are you doing, right? Yeah, Tasha's Ranger gets expertise, and blah. You know what Tasha's Ranger could have gotten? That would have been so sick. The UA had a lot of very cool things that this could have gotten. Roving. Roving should have been the thing that you got at 1st level, not Canny. Blah, not Canny. Come on, get that out of here. This is lazy, okay? Roving, 100%. Yeah, give me this. Yeah, I'm all about that. Tireless. This needed to be on the Barbarian. What do I think should have replaced Roving? Tremor Sense. I think you should have gotten a cool, unique, terrain-based sense out of that. Tremor Sense at 6 would have been perfect. Not a big Tremor Sense, not 60 feet or anything, but Tremor Sense. As long as you're on the ground, you have Tremor Sense out to whatever. Barbarian needed Tireless. But the biggest weakness of Barbarian is getting exhaustion. I mean, other than death, right? The last thing that you want to get as a Barbarian is exhaustion. Yeah. Being able to give them Tireless, I don't even think this needs to be a 10th. Only reason I put it here is because that's where Ranger got it. Honestly, what does Barbarian have at 6 that you couldn't give them this for? Other than the fact that they still need to eat. Barbarian gets nothing at 6th? Subclass feature, right? Yeah. Yeah, they needed something at 6th. Boom. Give them Tireless at 6th. You do so much good stuff for Barbarian with that right there. That is overcoming a massive detriment to playing a Barbarian. And that's if you get a point of exhaustion, if you get a level of exhaustion as a Barbarian, that makes it immediately harder for you to just do the thing your character options are telling you to do. The funny thing about Tireless and why I worry about making it a feat is this right here. Because this is an excuse to not have to roleplay. Because what this does is technically, because of this right here, you don't have to eat, sleep, or drink anymore. Ross figured this out, and it's so funny. It's so funny. Ross pointed it out in the UA, and I was actually like, oh my god, wait, we should probably fix that. Like, it means that you don't have to eat anymore. -1 exhaustion, like once per long rest. So it's a thing that I wrote, because I gave them Tireless, I think. Or Don't Stop Me Now. Right. Your movement speed can't be reduced by exhaustion. Whenever you finish a short rest, your exhaustion level, if any, is decreased by 1. You cannot decrease your exhaustion this way until you finish a long rest. I thought that was fine to give them at 5th level, right? Yeah, hungry, you'll get over it. It removes the narrative of like being well fed or like what does it mean to be starving. In which case, god damn, I'm hungry. Yeah, anyways, Tireless. But you wanted to make you want to give them some kind of utility, something cool that they can use with their action. Yeah. No, I know. I do need real food. What sounds good right now? And hey, I'm seeing that we got 50 subscribers. So hey, if you're liking the stream, why not go ahead and like down there, subscribe if you haven't already. If you're feeling generous, why not go check out my Patreon or leave a chat, a super chat, all that good stuff. I appreciate you all so much for being here. And I am going to get into the Runekeeper. I'm wearing shorts. These aren't underwear. No. No.
Please.
No.
Please.
I want to look cool for stream. They're not undies, they're athletic shorts. Secret to good marriage is yes, sweetie. No, it's fuck off. Okay. No, I was informing chat. I was talking a bit about like what I get out of playtesting, right? Over in the Discord server earlier today. I don't playtest to figure out like balance primarily. Playtesting information is telling me how fun a thing is, or if I need to make sure that something needs clarification, right? I can typically figure out how balanced and put together a thing is just from knowing the system, right? I say that having just fumbled the dodge shit earlier. Anyways, I trust my own design sensibilities to carry me a little bit, and then I do playtesting whenever I'm trying to make sure that things make sense, right? Most of the time, I pass those over to guys like Ross or Benjamin, because, or, you know, Heavy or Trek, because those are people who are figuring out, like, you need to probably ask the questions about, like, I don't know how this thing works quite yet, but they know how to ask how, or they know how to look for those sorts of instances. I hope that makes sense.